Welcome back, everybody. We're diving deep today into something I think we all struggle with sometimes, saying a no, but doing it gracefully.
Oh, yeah.
And to help us navigate this, we're going to be looking at Damon Zahariadis' book. It's called The Art of Saying No. I have a feeling this one's going to resonate with a lot of you.
Absolutely. It's a very common problem. And what's interesting is Zahariadis approaches it from a really personal point of view.
Yeah.
He actually starts the book by talking about his own experience as a recovering people pleaser.
Right. That part really caught my eye. He talks about how he used to bend over backwards for everyone.
Yeah.
To the point where he was constantly helping people move just because he had a pickup truck.
Oh, yeah. That's such a good example of how people pleasing can almost become like an automatic response for some people.
Oh, yeah.
You might not even realize you're doing it until you just start feeling completely drained and resentful.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like that? Like you felt obligated to say yes to things you really didn't have the time or energy for?
All the time. It's like you're constantly being pulled in a million different directions.
Right.
And you're trying to please everyone, but you end up feeling like you're failing yourself.
Yeah.
In the process.
Exactly. And Zahariadis really gets into the psychology behind it. He explains that it stems from this deep-seated desire for approval and acceptance. We crave those positive connections.
Yeah.
Saying no can feel like you're risking them.
But here's the thing that I found so interesting. He argues that saying no, it's not selfish at all.
Yeah.
It's actually a crucial act of self-care.
I love that.
He even uses that analogy of the airplane oxygen mask.
Yes.
You have to secure your own mask before you can help others.
A perfect analogy. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Setting healthy boundaries is so important. We can't truly show up for others if we're constantly sacrificing our own well-being.
Right.
It's like trying to pour from an empty cup.
Love that. Pouring from an empty cup. Okay, so what are some of the reasons why saying no can be so difficult in the first place? Zahariadis lists a bunch, right?
Oh, yes. Some of them are pretty straightforward, like the fear of disappointing people or, FOMO, fear of missing out.
Right, especially in today's world.
Oh, yeah. Where we're bombarded with everyone else's seemingly perfect lives, on social media and everything.
Right. And it's easy to feel pressured to say yes to everything, even if it means stretching ourselves too thin and ultimately ending up less fulfilled.
Totally. But he also dives into some deeper reasons too, like the fear of conflict or even emotional bullying.
I was really curious about that part. Can you talk a little bit more about what he means by emotional bullying?
Sure.
How that plays into our difficulty in saying no?
Yeah, absolutely. He defines emotional bullying as any behavior that uses guilt or fear or manipulation to pressure someone into doing something they don't want to do.
Okay.
And it can be subtle, like a guilt trip, or it can be more overt, like threats or insults.
Right. And when someone's using these tactics against you, it can be incredibly difficult to just stand your ground and say no.
Makes total sense. It's like you feel trapped, almost like you're walking on eggshells.
Right.
And saying no would just trigger this negative reaction.
Exactly. And Zahariadis points out that this can actually happen in all kinds of relationships, family, friends, coworkers.
Oh, yeah?
Even romantic partners.
So how do we break free from that cycle and start saying no with confidence? Does he offer any practical advice?
He does.
On how to kind of navigate those tricky situations?
And that's where it gets really interesting. He outlines 10 powerful strategies for saying no gracefully.
Okay.
And he even provides specific examples for different situations.
I'm all ears. Let's dive into some of those strategies and, see how we can actually start putting them into practice in our own lives.
Yeah.
So what's the first one?
So one of the most powerful strategies he highlights is being direct.
Instead of beating around the bush or making excuses, he encourages us to just state our no clearly and calmly.
That sounds simple enough, but I can imagine it's actually kind of daunting.
Oh, yeah.
In practice.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not used to asserting yourself like that.
It definitely takes practice. But Zahariadis does give us some helpful scripts and phrases that can make it feel a little less intimidating. Like, for example, instead of saying, "I'm not sure if I can make it," you could try saying, "Thank you so much for the invitation, but I won't be able to attend."
Oh.
It's direct and it's polite and there's no room for ambiguity.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I often find myself over-explaining or making excuses when I'm trying to say no. It's I feel this need to justify my decision,
Right. And that comes from that fear of judgment or disapproval that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But Zahariadis is very clear about this. We don't owe anyone an explanation. Our no is enough.
I love that. It's so liberating.
It is.
To give yourself permission to set those boundaries without feeling guilty or like you have to elaborate.
Totally. He also suggests replacing no with an alternative whenever possible. This can be a really nice way to soften the blow a little bit and maintain a positive tone.
I like that. Can you give an example?
Yeah, sure. So let's say a coworker asks you to help out with a project that you don't have the bandwidth for right now.
Right.
Instead of just saying no, you could say something like, oh, I'd love to help, but I'm swamped right now. Maybe you could ask so-and-so, or I might have some time next week.
Right. So it's about finding a win-win solution where you're respecting your own limits, but you're still being helpful and supportive.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about shifting the focus away from rejection.
Yeah.
And towards collaboration.
Yeah.
Finding a way to navigate the request in a way that works for everybody.
Totally. Another strategy that I really liked was the use of I don't statement.
Yes.
Instead of I can't. He talks about how that little shift in language can make a big difference.
Huge.
In how we actually perceive our own choices.
And it ties back to that idea of taking ownership, of our decisions. And prioritizing our well-being, because when we say I can't, it implies that there are all these outside forces that are stopping us from doing something.
Right.
Even if that's not true.
Like we're giving away our power.
Exactly.
And letting circumstances dictate our choices.
Yes, but when we say I don't, it becomes this statement of personal choice and commitment. Like you're drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is what I stand for.
So can you give a couple examples of how that language shift might actually play out in different situations?
Sure. Let's say you're tempted to stay up late scrolling through social media.
Oh, I know that feeling.
But, you need to get to sleep. So instead of saying, I can't stay up late, you could say, I don't stay up late on weeknights because I prioritize my sleep.
Right.
See, it's subtle.
It's subtle, but it feels so much more empowering.
It does.
It's like you're taking control of the situation instead of being controlled by your impulses.
Exactly. And it works for everything. Finances, going out, anything.
Like you're creating this personal code of conduct that reflects your values and your priorities.
Yes.
This is so insightful. But what about those times when, someone just won't take no for an answer?
Oh, yeah. The persistent ones.
Zarius talks about emotional bullying.
Yeah.
How do we deal with those people who just refuse to respect our boundaries?
He does, and he gives us some really effective strategies for holding our ground.
Okay.
One technique he recommends is the broken record technique.
Oh, that sounds intriguing. How does that work?
It's very simple, but really powerful. It involves just calmly repeating your no over and over again.
Okay.
Without getting flustered or drawn into an argument.
So it's like you become an unbreakable record. You just stay firm and consistent in your message.
Exactly. And by remaining calm and repeating that no, you're signaling that you're serious about your boundaries.
Okay.
And you won't be swayed.
That makes sense. You're being assertive, but you're not getting drawn into this power struggle.
Right.
But what about the situations where someone tries to guilt you into saying yes?
So the guilt trips.
How do you handle that kind of emotional manipulation?
So for that, Summaries suggests a technique called fogging.
Okay.
It's a way of deflecting the guilt trip without getting defensive.
Okay, I like where this is going. How does fogging work?
It's pretty simple. It basically involves acknowledging the other person's feelings.
Okay.
Without agreeing or disagreeing with them. So you might say something like, I understand that you're disappointed, or I can see why you feel that way.
Right.
But then you just reaffirm your no.
So you're validating their emotions, but you're not giving in.
Exactly. It's a great way to set a boundary without getting caught up in that cycle,
Yeah.
of guilt and manipulation.
These are so helpful. It's amazing how a simple shift in language or approach can make such a difference.
It really is. And what I love about Zahiri's book is that it's not all just theory.
Right.
He actually backs up his strategies with real-life examples and anecdotes from his own experience.
I like how he shares his personal struggles and triumphs. It makes the book feel relatable and authentic.
Oh, yeah. Totally. He even shares a story about setting boundaries with his neighbors.
I remember that part.
Who kept asking him to watch their pets.
It was such a good example of how even those small requests can add up
Yes.
and become overwhelming if you don't set those clear boundaries.
It's true. And I love his solution.
Yeah.
He created this blanket rule
Yeah.
that he wouldn't pet sit for anyone, regardless of the situation.
It's a smart approach
It is.
because it takes the pressure off of having to make individual decisions and risk feeling guilty or obligated.
Exactly. And it reinforces the idea that it's okay to have those blanket rules and put yourself and your time first.
This deep dive is already giving me a whole new perspective on the power of no. It's like we've been given this toolbox for navigating those difficult social situations with more confidence and grace.
And remember, it's not about becoming a no machine.
Right.
It's about finding that balance between honoring our own needs and being supportive of others.
So what are some of the key takeaways we can apply starting today?
One that really resonated with me is the importance of recognizing our self-worth, and understanding that saying no is not a sign of weakness. It's about setting those healthy boundaries and protecting our time and energy.
It's like we're reclaiming our time and energy.
Yeah.
And choosing to invest it in things that really matter to us,
Exactly. And just being mindful of that language that we use.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of, I can't, let's try those I don't statements.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but it can make a huge difference in how we see those choices.
Totally. He also talks about the importance of being direct and honest, but, with grace and respect.
Yeah.
You don't have to over-explain or make up excuses.
No.
A simple, sincere no is usually all you need.
Absolutely.
And remember, it's okay to start small. Practice saying no in those kind of low-stakes situations.
Right.
Before you try tackling the bigger ones.
Like opting out of that store credit card offer or a phone survey.
Exactly. It's like anything else. It's a muscle.
Right.
The more you practice it, the stronger and more comfortable you'll become asserting your boundaries.
Absolutely. And as you start to feel more comfortable saying no, you'll notice a shift.
Yeah.
In your relationships and your well-being.
So I guess the takeaway is saying no is really about taking care of yourself.
It is.
So you can better show up for the people and things that matter most to you.
Absolutely.
This has been great. I feel like I've learned so much. Is there anything else for the book that really stood out to you?
You know what really got me was Zahariadis' idea that saying no is an act of self-preservation. It's not selfish.
Right.
It's about honoring your limits and not constantly saying yes to things that drain your energy or go against your values.
It's like he's saying it's okay to put yourself first sometimes.
Yes, and recognize that your time and energy are precious.
Yeah.
And if you're going to say yes to something, it should be from a place of genuine enthusiasm, not obligation.
Right. This has been such a game changer for me. I feel so much more equipped to handle those, tricky situations that used to feel impossible.
Good. I'm glad.
For our listeners who are, maybe inspired to explore the art of saying no a little deeper, definitely check out Damon Zahariadis' book, The Art of Saying No. It's full of practical strategies, real-life examples, and it's just a really insightful read.
It's so good.
And it really can empower you to create a life that feels more fulfilling and authentic by making choices that align with your values and your goals.
Totally.
So to wrap up this awesome deep dive, here's a final thought for you. Since learning to say no is a journey, what's one small no you can practice today to build up your confidence?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's saying no to that extra task at work, or skipping that tempting late-night snack. Whatever it is, try it out. Embrace the power of no and see what happens.